guys, today we are going to make a tutorial video of how to make these little present bags. And then we're using the fabric of Little Frosty.
So the first thing you're gonna have to do is iron the hem. So this would be the top of your bag. And so if you have like this part of the fabric, you can leave it there because you double over this part. So it won't matter if you still have this, what do they call this? I don't remember what they call this, but you can just iron it down once and then you're gonna flip it down again, and you can do like a good inch. You just have to make sure you do that the same on each side of the bag, because then it'll look nice and pretty when you tie it. So on this side this is called the selvage actually, so I'm gonna iron down that selvage, and then when I flip it over I want to make sure I have about the same distance as I did on my other side, and then it's ready for you to sew. Okay, now you're gonna sew just your hem piece down. So this edge for the hemming needs to get sewn down right across this line right here. You don't need to backstitch or anything because you'll go over this again, and you just do a nice straight line all the way across what will be the top of the bag. Okay, now you're going to take your two ends that will be the top of the bag, put them together, and you do want your right sides out. So you want the side of the bag that you want to have out, because you're actually going to sew across this 2 times so that you have something called a French seam, so that all these little pieces aren't going to come off on your presents. Okay, I'm going to have a 1/4 inch seam, so right along the edge of my presser foot, and I'm just going to sew straight down. And here you could backstitch just to lock it in. Other side, you're gonna do the same thing. Put the top of your bags together again, and then you're gonna grab your ribbon. I'm actually just using some extra ribbon, and instead of putting it right here up at the top, you want to put it down probably about, I guess, is that about 3 inches, and you want to have it sit straight out. Oh, I lost a piece. I'm using old ribbon, so I have 2 pieces that are kind of mismatched, but that'll be okay. You can use just 1 piece and fold it in half if you want, and put it about here, because then when you tie your bag together, you have some of this top stuck up on there. And I usually go ahead and pin it right there loosely. And then of course you always want to pull your pin out. Don't ever sew over your pin or my mother will be upset with you. And then you can go ahead and start sewing. Same thing, you want to have that 1/4 inch seam. And then remember, when you get to your pin, pull that out. Just make sure it goes over your ribbon. And then you sew down to the bottom. Okay, now that we have our bag all together, but we have these seams that we don't want to see, now we're actually going to turn it so that it is inside out. And you have your right sides together. And we are going to sew along those 2 side seams one more time. And we're going to use a 5/8 inch seam allowance so that we catch all of those unfinished edges on the outside. When we turn it around, we'll have something that are called French seams, so you have this finished seam on the inside, so all those little frays won't come off on your presents. If you are very neat, you might want to iron before you sew. I am not super neat. I like to get things done, so I just kind of make sure it's as flat as possible, and then I sew away. So just make sure when you start to sew that you have the ribbon pulled straight so that it doesn't get caught in your seam that you're gonna make. And then you want to make sure that that seam allowance again is at 5/8. There should be a marking right here on your sewing machine, but if not, you could just put tape, like some masking tape, a little bit farther out from where you made your original seam allowance, so that you make sure to catch all those unfinished edges on the inside of that seam. Here you're going to want to backstitch because you need to lock it in, because this is the finished piece of the bag, and then you're simply going to sew all the way down to the bottom and backstitch when you get to the bottom as well. Alright, and then when you're all done making those seams, now you have this clean seam here, you see that? And you turn it this way, And you have a present bag that has the tie attached to it. And more, all you have to do now here is right here, you're going to trim these little guys if you want to. I mean, really, you don't have to, but you trim that off. And
then you can just put your little present in, like say it's a shirt. You just slide it right in there and you tie it. And then there's your little present bag.
perfect.